I am 6'4" and 330 pounds. In other words, I am not a normal mountain biker. And today what I'm gonna do is go through my bike setup and the gear that I use to show you guys what it's like to be this big and ride modern mountain bikes. So I'm gonna go through everything from suspension setup to wheels to helmets, all of the above. You guys have been asking for this for a very long time, so let's get to it. So to start things off, let's start with my bike. Now this right here is my Enduro. I have set this thing up pretty much as perfectly as I can get it for me and my size. Hence the reason why I want to go through this bike as opposed to another one that we have. This thing is basically just set up as perfect as I can get it, as comfortable for a bike and as confident of a bike as I can get it. So there's a lot of stuff to talk about here. I'll go through a few different things, and the very first thing I want to go through is the suspension. Now, the suspension is super important, especially for someone my size. As you can see, we've got the Fox Kashima coated, the cool gold color on here. I absolutely love this suspension setup. This is the Fox 38 with the new damper in it. This came out last year in 2024. I love it. The new damper is amazing. It feels super good. And because it's a 38, it's so stiff. Like, I cannot emphasize how stable this fork is. Like, I absolutely love it. I've had to do very little service to this thing. It's probably due for a service at some point pretty soon. But what you guys are all probably wondering is how I set this thing up. Now, that's super kind of important, super kind of not important, but I have to put a lot of spacers, a lot of volume spacers actually. So up in here, if you don't know how forks work, you've got the air chamber, the damper over here, and basically, you know, you can put these volume spacers inside of here. And I have 3 volume spacer pucks inside the fork. And on top of that, I run the fork at about 160 PSI. I know that's not really what I should be riding for my weight, so I know a lot of the guys out there that are suspension geniuses are probably thinking, what are you doing? That's just how I like to run it. So on top of that, this fork is at a 170 mil travel as well. I just love the higher travel forks. For the actual compression, I kind of just run it. I don't really know exactly how many clicks of each, but I know that I run it so it's a lot stiffer than usual. But one thing I do like a lot is I like to run my suspension a lot slower. So the rebound, I've got a lot less rebound than I would for a bike that I do more jumping with. So this bike, for example, I use it for more downhill trail riding type stuff. So I've got this thing set up so that the rebound's a lot slower, so that when I do hit a jump, it's not bucking me on the trail going at trail speed, or if there's like rocks that are a little bit gnarlier, I have a little bit more, you know, pop over those rocks, and it's not too much of a problem for me. That's generally how I like to run my suspension, just a little bit slower, nice and stiff, and that's what it is. In the rear, we have pretty much the same kind of setup as far as like compression and rebound goes. I run the rear a lot slower than I do the front, just because I have to do more clicks to be able to get this thing to the point where I like it to feel to match up with the front. So I know there's a lot of jargon, but essentially what you need to know is that I try to run it as even as possible. And in the rear, it's a lot harder to get that with most suspension. I've found the X2, the new Fox X2, is pretty good for my weight. It's super stable. I never really have a problem setting these things up for my weight and how I like to ride. But I will say, full disclaimer, do not use my settings to set up your suspension, because I am running these things beyond the max limit that Fox wants you to run them. So I'm sorry, anybody at Fox who's watching. I'm sorry if you want to copy my setup. Don't do it. I'm telling you right now, don't do it. It might destroy your suspension, or it might, you know, get you hurt, right? So don't follow what I'm doing. This is just how I set up my bikes. I'm running it beyond the max PSI. I think the max PSI for the X2 is somewhere around 350 pounds. Don't quote me on that. I think it's somewhere around, I'm sure there's a sticker somewhere that tells you on here, but I'm running this thing probably closer to 400 pounds PSI. So, like I said, anybody at Fox, don't freak out. Don't freak out. I've been doing this for a long time. Don't do this yourself. I'm telling you, anybody watching, don't do this. but I have this thing set up at around 400 pounds, but I like the rear being a whole lot stiffer. Like I said, I like to run my suspension a lot stiffer. It just feels more stable for me. And the only way I can get the rear shock to feel like how I want it is by way over ramping on the PSI. On top of that, I'm running max spacers. So the volume spacers you can do in the front and the rear as well. In the front, they're pucks. In the rear, they're like these shim things. They're interesting, but you put them in the body of the shock and they actually make a huge difference. So I'm running max shims, the volume spacers in the rear. I've got the compression completely maxed on the rear, like completely maxed. I cannot twist this button any more than it already is. Also, the rebound is to the max as well in the slow setting. So I have this thing going as slow rebound as I can possibly get it. I've got the compression as ramped up as I can possibly get it. And that's the only way I'm able to make this shock feel as the fork does. So that's my setting for the suspension. I absolutely love it. Like I said, I'm a big fan of running the Fox suspension. It's just so good, it's so buttery, and that's not to say there's other great suspension. There's a lot of great suspension companies out there, but I found the most success with my weight and kind of my riding style to be with this exact setup. The 38 up front and the X2 in the rear. Now, the next thing on the bike that's another very, very controversial topic is the tire and wheel setup. Everybody has their preferences. For me, I only ride downhill casing tires. Like the thick tires, that's all I put on my bikes. On top of that, I literally don't take a bike seriously unless it has CushCore in it. Now, CushCore is, so you can see the label right there, CushCore is the insert. I probably have one somewhere around here. CushCore, it's snowing outside. This is CushCore right here. So what it does is it fits inside the rim, inside the tire, and as you can tell, it's like this foam insert, and like probably a lot of you guys already know what this is. Basically what it does is two things. It technically adds a little more suspension onto your bike, and it protects the rim as well. So for most people, you can run less PSI in the tire, and so that ends up giving you like, you know, a lot more grip in your tire and your wheel and everything. But for me, the main purpose this thing serves is to keep my tires on the rim, because what I'm about to tell you is super dangerous, and I don't recommend any of you guys do this. I'm serious, don't do this. The PSI that I run my tires at is kind of absurd. Most people, I don't even want to tell you guys because it's so bad. Like most people, like Dursey behind the camera, what do you run your tires at, like 25 PSI?
The most would be like 30, but...
30, yeah, most. And that's like if you're dirt jumping and stuff. Yeah, so the average person, and Dursey's a normal sized person, he's running between 25 and 30 PSI. I run my tires at 50 PSI. And that's like on the low end for me. I've run them up to 60 PSI before, especially if I'm doing like dirt jumping and stuff. I think most rim companies tell you not to run anything past 40 PSI. And like I said, with the CushCore in here, you're running tubeless. So there's just, all there is tire sealant in here. There's no tube, there's nothing keeping it all together. So having the CushCore in here genuinely saves me from blowing rims constantly. And I have, honestly, now that I'm thinking about it, I can't remember the last time I've blown a rim or tire off the rim. I genuinely can't remember. It doesn't really happen to me very often. It just kind of goes to show how good tires and rims are getting nowadays, and having the help there. So like I said, let me reiterate, don't do what I'm doing. These products are not meant to do what I'm putting them through. I know there's a lot of debate about what's better, carbon or aluminum rims, you know, the wheels. Honestly, I've had both. I've run extensively both carbon and aluminum wheels. I tend to come back to aluminum wheels. I just trust them a little bit more. It's kind of your personal preference and really what your budget is, because carbon wheels are easily double on average of what the aluminum wheels are. So I go through rims very, very seldom. Like I really don't blow up wheels as much as people would think I do. Have I blown up wheels in the past? Yes. But it's not as common as you think, especially nowadays with how good wheels are getting. So honestly, I just run aluminum wheels. You know, they're not the lightest, but they are pretty strong, and I'm always pretty happy with them. Plus they're super easy to true if I do get them a little bit wobbly. So next, another really, really important thing for my bikes is having good brakes. Now, another debatable topic, everyone says that Shimano's are the best, or SRAMs are the best, or TRPs are the best, or Hope brakes are the best, or Maguras are the best. I get it, brakes are getting really, really good nowadays. There's so many good brands. However, one that I have that I really, really like are the TRP brakes. These are actually the old DHR Evo brakes. As you could probably, by the time this video is coming out, there's the new version of these, so they just dropped a new one. But this is the old version, and I really, really like this thing. It's held the bled for the 2 years that I've owned these. Like, I've probably bled them one time, and I think it was only to shorten the cable a little bit because it was too long on a bike, and that was pretty much it. Other than that, they're fantastic. Like, I really, really like these brakes. On the rotor over here, I'm actually running the biggest rotor that you can get for these brakes. They're the 223 mil rotor. You can see that right there. That's another thing with the brakes that I have to do. On most of my bikes, I'm running the 220 or 223 mil rotors. They just make a huge difference for me. I know that if you're a more normal sized person, this is probably not gonna be that big of a deal for you, but for me, it makes a huge, huge difference. So when I can, I'm running the 220 mil and higher brakes. They just make a huge difference for me. Another really cool thing about these brakes, if you look up here, if you come in close right here, you see this lever right here looks super, super custom. And if you look on this side, check that out. See that custom normal MT Beer logo right there? That is because these are Freedom Coast levers. They actually sent these to me. Shout out to Freedom Coast, you guys should check them out. They make some awesome brake levers, just bits for your bikes and stuff. And they actually sent these to me, made custom brake levers with my logo on them, and sent them out. How cool is that? And I absolutely love how these things feel. They're single finger braking. So usually when you get the TRP brakes, you can use them for 2, but this one, single finger. And I absolutely love it, man. I just want to finger these things just all day long. The bars, now that we're up here, let's talk about the bar cockpit setup here. As far as the bars go, another very critical thing, for me at least, I'm a lot taller. Obviously I'm 6'4". Most people aren't that tall. So for me, what I found works really, really well for arm pump and for my back is the higher rise bars. These things are 800 mils wide and they're 50 millimeter rise. So that means the bar is going up a lot higher, a lot closer to you rather than a lot further down. That kind of lets me, when I'm climbing, it allows me to sit up a little bit higher on the bike, meaning I'm putting a lot less stress on my back, which helps me out in the long run a lot. And then also, I love how the higher rise feels on downhills. You just have a little bit better control over the cornering. You can jump a little bit better. At least for me, I know that generally for cornering, you want lower bars, but since I'm in so much more of a comfortable position, having that little bit more of rise just makes it feel so good. So I'm actually running 50 mil rise bars on pretty much every single bike that I have. It's one of those things where once you try it out, you just can't. Like, once you go black, you never go back. You know what I'm saying? And the stem, I don't like longer stems. I really like the short stems. As close as I can get the bar to the steer tube of the fork, the better in my opinion. It's just so much more responsive. You know, the longer bars, it feels like you're doing this. Like, this is how you're, it feels like you're steering like this. Whereas with the shorter ones, you're steering like this, right? So that's just my sea bass version of physics. Science. The grips are another really, really important thing. Nowadays, there's pretty much only one grip that I ride, and that's this one right here. It is the Sensus Meaty Paw. This thing's amazing. I think it was designed with Kyle Straight. I think this is his signature grip. Either way, it's amazing, man. I run these on every single one of my bikes, and I love how they feel. The rubber is super, super nice. But the most important thing is they are really wide, like they're thick. These are I don't know if they're the thickest grips on the market, but they're definitely up there for sure. Like, that compared to a standard grip is a whole nother world of a difference for me, because I obviously have really big hands, as you can tell, really, really big hand. Like, look, Jersey, put up your hand real quick. Look at this. That's, let's make it normal. Look at, that's how much bigger my hand is compared to him. So, and he's a normal sized person, and he has big hands too. Like, your hands are not small. So I need to have those big hands, right? And that's another thing, having grips that work for you and kind of your what is it, ergonomics? No, what is it? I don't know. I don't know what I'm trying to say. The point is, having grips that work for your hands make a big difference. Like, I'm pretty sure most of you guys that aren't comfortable on your bikes, if you were to just find a grip that works, it would change the world for you. Like, literally change the world. Because once I found these, a lot of the arm pump that you get when you're going through chatters and just long days at the bike park, these grips, for me at least, have helped out significantly. So another thing that's super important for me is the seat and the pedals. Now, the seat is something that I have a lot of struggle with because my butt is pretty big. Like, it's not just thick, like I'm just a larger person. Like, there's more to my butt than most people. So I have to kind of, deal with that when it comes to seats. I, to this day, have not found a seat that works for me perfectly. So I'm just running the stock seat that came on this bike. It works. It does the job, right? Pedals, another contact point on the bike, really important. I cannot run pedals that are smaller than a certain size. And that's because my feet are massive. They're very big. I wear a size 17 US shoe, like a size 17. I don't know if you Europeans know what that is. I'll put a number here what it's like in the European size. It's a big foot. I have a problem finding shoes. I'll go through that later with you guys when I go through my gear. But what you need to know about the pedals is these things, I just run, either plastic or metal. I think they're both great. I've never broken plastic pedals. I've never broken metal pedals. Personally, I've seen both of these, plastic and metal break, but I've never broken them. I guess I'm not riding hard enough. And then cranks, just aluminum cranks. I don't mess with carbon cranks. I will not go anywhere near carbon fiber cranks. I don't know, people will say, oh, I've had carbon cranks for the last 50 years on my bike and they're fantastic, you got it. Yes, I know, most people, they're fine. But for me, I don't want to take that risk. Carbon cranks, big no-no on my bikes. I don't f with those things. Now, the last thing with the bike is probably the most important thing, and that is the frame. Now, I get a lot of DMs that go something like this. Hey Seabass, I'm a big dude just like you, and I'm in the market for a new bike. Should I get a carbon bike or an aluminum bike? Well, that's a really hard question to answer, and I don't really have a good answer for you, to be honest. This right here is a carbon bike. I've had this thing for about a year. I've had bikes just like this in the past, and I've never had any major issues with it. Yes, I've cracked some frames every once in a while, but never anything catastrophic, where the frame snaps in two and I go to the hospital. Luckily, I haven't had any of that. But the reality is that it kind of doesn't really matter what bike you get nowadays. They're getting so good, the technology is getting so advanced that you're probably not gonna be breaking too many bikes. And especially when it comes to like bigger dudes, I tend to like the carbon bikes a little bit more than the aluminum bikes. Now, there are some catches to that, but in general, the carbon bike tends to be a little bit lighter, so it makes climbing a lot easier for me. It tends to be a little bit stronger. Weirdly, carbon fiber is stronger than aluminum. And most importantly, it's super stiff. And I like that. I'm a big fan of stiffness. I like things when they're stiff. And so I noticed that when I was going between carbon and aluminum bikes, the aluminum bikes are considerably more flexible than the carbon ones are. At the bottom bracket, at the rear wheel, I noticed going into corners, the rear wheel is flexing a whole bunch more than I actually like. So with the carbon bikes, that very rarely happens. So I like a nice stiff rear end, and this is kind of the only way I can achieve that feel. But to answer the question simply, should you get a carbon or aluminum bike? Well, how much money do you have? That's realistically the answer. So now let's go through some gear, which is equally as important as the bike itself, because there's some stuff here that's a little unique to someone my size. But first, smash that like button, just hit it right now and subscribe. We're on our way to 1 million subscribers, unheard of for mountain bikers. Well, actually, no. There's a few other mountain bikers who have 1 million subscribers. There's some that have 2 and 3. I'm pretty sure Fabio Widmer has like 7 or 8 million. Let's catch up to Fabio Widmer, you guys. Come on, subscribe right now. Okay, now the very first thing I'm gonna talk about here is shoes. Arguably the most important thing that you can have if you want to be a mountain biker. And like I was telling you guys, my feet are a lot bigger than most people's. Just to put in perspective the sheer size of my feet, this is my brother Dursey's shoe. It's a size 10.5. Chances are your shoe size is very similar to his, if not exactly the same. Now, there's his shoe. Now, this is my shoe. Just completely different, just massive. I mean, you put that, it's like ogre feet compared to an elf foot. This is just absolutely ridiculous, the size here. Now, because my feet are just so much bigger than the average foot, it's really, really hard to find shoes that work for me. In fact, there is currently no shoe on the market for mountain biking that I'm aware of. So if anyone knows this, let me know. But there is no shoe that I could find that is in size 17. And that's a really big problem for me because I'm left with just riding with whatever I can get. For instance, these are some DC shoes. They're meant for skateboarding, but they kind of do the job. Like if you look at the footprint, they're kind of similar. Not really ideal at all, but it does the job. So I'm kind of left with doing this. A lot of the times you'll see in my videos that I'm wearing like tennis shoes or New Balances or whatever. That's just because I can't find shoes. So if there's any companies out there that make shoes that want to make me a size 17 mountain bike shoe, let's talk. So my head, just like the rest of my body, is big. And anybody with a big head knows that it's kind of hard to find helmets that fit you properly. Now, in the past, I've always run these Specialized helmets the last couple of years. They've been great. They've all fit me super well. Now this one right here, the Dissident, is kind of my downhill bike helmet that I've been using for the last couple of years. And it's been great. Obviously, downhill helmets fit a little bit snug, so if you have a bigger head, it's gonna be more of a squeeze to get it on. If you guys have any suggestions for helmets that I should try that are downhill helmets, throw them in the comments below. I definitely wanna try some more options, just like this. Over here, like I said, I've been running the Specialized helmets, but now I'm branching out, I'm trying out new things. I've really come to like this TLD flow line. It fits super well. It's got a lot of adjustment and it's just so comfortable. I love the way that this thing feels. And in the past, I've actually used TLD helmets way before the sponsored life. So it's really cool to go back and try new things, the new stuff that they've been coming up with. And this thing, nothing but good things to say about it, especially because the colors are super sick. But yeah, so anybody who has, bigger heads or has figured out a good helmet, just let me know in the comments. What have you guys found? What do you think? Give me some suggestions. Now, lastly on the list is my eye protection. Now, this is super, super important because if you've ever ridden a bike before, whether it's mountain, road, or whatever, there is constantly stuff flying up and hitting you in the face. And the last thing you want to do is destroy your eyesight because a bug flew in or a rock hit you or whatever. So to protect myself, I run the Heatwave goggles and the Heatwave glasses because they make both of them. These things are absolutely incredible. They've been a sponsor of the channel the last few years. We absolutely love them. And if you guys know me personally, you know that I'm very particular about what goes on my face because a lot of glasses, let's be honest, they kind of suck. And these ones definitely don't because not only are they in Z87, which that means for any of you guys who don't know, it means that they are resistant to a lot of impact. So it's perfect for when you're riding a bike, especially when you have rocks and stuff flying up. These things will actually protect you. And more importantly, to big dudes like me, they make extra large frame sizes. So these things are made bigger for people with bigger heads, just like me, so that we look normal when we're wearing glasses. I mean, how genius is that? Like, who else does that you know in the industry? Freaking amazing. So go down in the link below if you guys are interested in these at all. Check it out. I've got a link below. I've got a discount code, the whole 9 yards. Go check that out. So there you have it. My setup as a 6'4", 330 pound ogre of a mountain biker. If you absolutely hated this video, go comment below, let me know how much you hated it, then delete the app, delete the YouTube app, get your phone, shut it off, throw it in the sink, hit the decompose or the compost button, shred your phone up, then go in the bathroom because I don't really care. But I'll see you guys on the next one. Like the video, subscribe. See you guys soon.